Hi, my name is Alex and I welcome you to today's video. The fantasy world of Amalur was created in the early 2010s in order to establish a large new brand that could house a wide variety of games. The developers at Big Huge Games and publisher Electronic Arts even brought in prominent people like fantasy author R.A. Salvador, Morrowind and Oblivion lead designer Ken Rolston and comic book icon Todd McFarlane. When Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning was released in spring 2012, it was only supposed to be the prelude. A sequel was already being planned and an online role-playing game in the same universe was also worked on. However, nothing came of all these ambitious plans. Despite its undisputed good quality, the commercial success failed to materialize. The developers released 2 more DLCs for the role-playing game before Big Huge Games went out of business. After the sale of the trademark rights from the studio's bankruptcy estate failed several times, the future of Amalur remained uncertain for a long time. Then, in the summer of 2018, THQ Nordic took over the rights. With some delay, the publisher is now releasing a remaster version of the role-playing game on the Nintendo Switch. As a disclaimer, we'll only go into the Switch version and largely ignore the differences to the original. In Kingdoms of Amalur, you take on the role of a protagonist who has just died. However, the experience of an inventive gnome helps you get a second life. The special thing about it, you no longer have a destiny, which is a very big problem in the world of Amalur. Everything and everyone follows the great cycle of prediction. Someone who can take his fate into his own hands turns the existing order upside down. As interesting as this initial premise is, the rest of the plot unfortunately falls into a typical fantasy cliché. An evil opponent who wants to enslave the whole world and all people, the fateless hero, you, is the only person who can stop him. This story also only gets going very sluggishly. Unfortunately, the developers also squandered potential to make more out of the hero's role as a figure without destiny. This starting position would have been great for important decisions with consequences for the characters and the world. But possible dialogue decisions have no effect at all and only result in slightly changed conversations. The strengths of the title, which nevertheless make it a good role-playing game, lie in other areas. First and foremost, the motivating game mechanics. Kingdoms of Amalur interestingly weaves together a huge open game world with a motivating item spiral, an action-packed combat system and character development that is nevertheless quite deep in terms of role-playing. The result is that, despite its shortcomings in its story and presentation, the game is, above all, fun to play. It is incredibly motivating to keep playing, to complete quests, to discover secrets, and to develop one's own character further and further. The combat systems in role-playing games can sometimes seem static and bulky. Not so in Amalur, where we dodge with a roll, block and parry with a shield, and combine our attacks into a fancy animated combo attacks. Not only the character stats of the hero are important here, but also the skill of the player. Timing plays an important role, otherwise the opponent will use every opportunity to put the player on the defensive. The type of combos that can be executed is determined to no small extent by the weapon equip. In addition, there are abilities and spells that can be unlocked via 3 skill trees. The combat therefore feels very dynamic and satisfying. In this context, it's also nice that there are no traditional classes. Although the 3 talent trees of Might, Finesse and Sorcery follow the classic pattern of Warrior, Rogue and Mage, we are completely free to choose what we want to skill, when and how. Even the choice of armor type or weapons is not limited to any skills. We assemble our equipment based on the stats we prefer and choose a weapon that suits our fighting style. For a small fee, we can also reset our skills at any time and experiment with new builds. With such a big RPG, you wonder how it's going to run, especially on the Switch. At this point I can reassure everyone, the game runs really well. It looks nice, even though it shows the age of the original. Some scenery still look breathtaking and the frame rate remains almost always stable. Unfortunately, we don't have the exact data yet. But the game seems to run at 1080p and 30 frames per second, and in handheld mode it seems to run in 720p, but this number could be a bit lower. So let's come to a conclusion. Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning may no longer be the most up-to-date RPG, but it still knows how to convince, with a fun combat system, a beautiful world and many exciting enemies. In the end, these points outweigh the somewhat cliched story. It successfully fills the current gap of Western RPGs, and I'm really glad that THQ Nordic decided to port this gem to Nintendo's hybrid console after all. Only the price of $40 seems a bit too high for a game that is almost 10 years old. For all these reasons, I rate Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning for the Nintendo Switch an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. If you liked it, we would be very happy about a like and a subscription. Or if you're interested in getting early access to our future reviews, feel free to visit our Patreon page.